Well, hello, everyone. Good evening. On behalf of Fasken, I want to thank you all for joining us in person and online for Legal Futures, AI Skills and Success, an event focused on the future of law and the skills that will shape the profession. My name is Letecia Rose, and I'm the Chief Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer at Fasken. And it's a privilege to partner with the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers, CABLE, and for convening this conversation about how technology and AI are transforming legal practice and how we can also position ourselves to succeed in a technologically driven future. At Fasken, equity, diversity, inclusion are core priorities, and working with organizations like CABLE allows us to take concrete steps by working to create access to opportunities, supporting professional growth, helping others ensure that the legal sector reflects the diversity of the communities that it serves. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the land that we're gathered on today. We're in Toronto, so that's the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, the Anishinaabe peoples, and is covered the Mississaugas of the Credit and Métis First Nations. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and signed by many Mississaugas and Chippewa bands across the nation. For those joining us online, we invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land that you're joining us from. If you've never visited native.land.ca, it's a great place to learn about where you are situated on. So feel free to add that into the chat. And for those who are in the audience, feel free to do that on the break. Land acknowledgements are not only about honoring land, it's also about raising awareness of Indigenous presence, histories, and futures. Guided by our reconciliation action plan, we're committed to moving beyond just land acknowledgements and moving towards truth, education, and meaningful action. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, Keihgan Blackmore. Keihgan is a corporate and commercial lawyer with a focus on technology, gaming, and emerging digital sectors. A graduate from McGill University's Faculty of Law, Keihgan has advised on a variety of commercial, transactional, and regulatory matters. Before private practice, Keihgan worked in the public policy for the Canadian federal government and has held leadership roles within the Black Law Students Association. He continues to champion mentorship through his work at the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers. So Keihgan, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our amazing panel and get us started.
Thank you so much, Letecia. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to welcome you to tonight's panel discussion. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you online as well, and of course our distinguished panelists and speakers to explore the dynamic intersection of artificial intelligence, legal education, and the practice of law. I have the privilege of introducing tonight's panelists, Dolapo Fadare, Jake Okechukwu, Effoduh, and of course, Andrew Alleyne. Dolapo is a sales leader, and founder of StriveOpp, a consultancy that helps startups scale revenue and guides underrepresented talent into tech sales careers. With more than 8 years of experience in SaaS, fintech, cybersecurity, and health tech, Dolapo drives growth for leading North American startups and coach professionals to secure over 1.5 million in offers. She partners to advance equity in tech as a sales expert, a skills training partner with organizations like the Black Founders Network, the Federation of Black Canadians, and Empower Her Too. Jake is an assistant professor at the Lincoln Alexander School of Law and legal scholar. His research explores the intersection of AI, human rights, and international law. He leads Codes for Algorithmic Justice, addressing algorithmic bias against Black Canadians, and convenes Black Futures by Design to advance racial justice in AI governance. As a Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst Fellow and UNESCO expert on AI and the rule of law, Jake trains judges globally and edits leading tech journals. His work has been published in top outlets, including the Harvard Human Rights Journal and Oxford University Press. Andrew is a vice chair of Fasken's Technology Group in Ontario and a partner with a corporate commercial practice focused on technology and M&A transactions. He advises on IT and business process outsourcing, ERP and system implementation, cloud and SaaS agreements, software licensing, and technology-related due diligence, as well as the legal and regulatory aspects of online gambling in Canada. Andrew frequently works on cross-border private M&A deals and complex technology transactions, and he is president of CanTech Law and was named Lawyer of the Year for Technology Law in the Best Lawyers of Canada 2026 guide. Andrew is also recognized by Chambers, Lexpert, Who's Who Legal, and actively contributes to nonprofit boards and community initiatives. Before jumping into the questions, let me take a quick moment to contextualize today's discussion. AI is a topic that is effectively omnipresent. I don't know how many talks I've been to recently, but I'm sure everyone here has been to at least 7 in the last 7 days. So the thing that we try to present today is something that's rarely touched upon. And speaking with many of my senior mentors, business connections, and friends across the industries, many have said that this technology has the potential to be as disruptive to work and personal life as the internet. AI is an evolving force that challenges how we think, how we learn, and how we practice. But how does this affect young lawyers developing their initial competencies? From the way that students prepare to enter the profession to the qualities and strategies to help lawyers thrive in an AI-driven world, there's much to unpack. So today, we'll delve into thought-provoking questions about adaptability, AI literacy, and the transformative impact of the technology more broadly. Of course, this is a forward-looking and AI discussion, and AI is always changing. So we thankfully have the license to be wrong on a few points. But our intention is to provide some insight into what we believe to be important strategies for integrating AI responsibly, maintaining critical thinking, and positioning ourselves for long-term success in an era of rapid change. It's my pleasure to guide this conversation, and I encourage you to all in the room and online be actively present. So feel free to engage. We will begin with about 45 minutes of directed panel discussion with at least 15 minutes of questions. But again, active engagement is what we're looking for. So without further ado, I'll move to the first question. Let's start with a big one, and I'll direct this to Jake and possibly Andrew. From your perspective, how is AI reshaping both legal education and legal practice? What does that mean for students and young lawyers preparing to practice?
I would first say thank you so much, Andrew, and everyone here at Fasken and this collaboration with Cable. I think this is a very relevant discussion. And to Karen and everyone who's put this really phenomenal event together, I am really grateful to be here. To address your question, I think there are so many ways to unpack the impact of artificial intelligence on legal education. I would say it is pivotal to why my law school actually exists. So the Lincoln Alexander School of Law had to come to bear to deal with issues around EDI, technological literacy, and entrepreneurship in this new fourth industrial revolution. I teach data science law. I never did data science law when I was a law student. It's still some people are like, what is that? But data, algorithms, and the science and the law has become so critical that it's not law and it is a very constructive, realistic aspect of the law. So it's a required course, and students get to learn the dynamics of data, what data is, how does data emanate, who stores data, how is it recorded, what is the value of data, what are the legal issues around data protection, data sovereignty, interoperability of data. We could spend 12 weeks just talking about data itself. How do you protect data? How do you anonymize data as a lawyer? Where do you store, for how long? How do you report data? There's just a lot just on data alone. And then we look at algorithms like AI, and students have to learn to use AI, learn to build AI, learn to know what AI tools to use, learn to know when and how to effectuate the use of these tools. How do they verify outputs from large language models? So, in the course I teach, students have to learn context engineering, which people call prompt engineering, learning how do you couch the question to use for a generative AI tool? That is critical thinking, like you mentioned. No one is going to teach you how to come up with the answer. How do you know when it's hallucinating? Of course, we don't use hallucinating because it's a biological term. We're a bit more critical. We say it's erroneous information, it's error. And students have to know the rules that both the American bar and most jurisdictions qualify AI tool as like a junior partner of some sort. So you take responsibility. In my class, I liken it to like your secretary. If your secretary helps you type a letter and I put my name on it, if it's defamatory, I get sued, not my secretary. So don't expect AI tools to come with terms and conditions or how do we sue the AI system. No, you take responsibility when you're in control of the AI tools. So the dynamic has changed, not just for legal practice, but for legal education as well. I would not lie to you to say students are worried. They're worried about if they're going to be replaced. They're worried about if they're going to get jobs. They're worried about if they need to know the law, all the courses they have to know, but also the competency of using the technology. And it's proliferating so fast, you don't know if you're really caught up or, when we started the first year of the law school, we thought it would be a good idea for students to learn how to code. But right now, AI tools can code sometimes even better than humans. So we've moved away from coding. I would say that I am not purely AI optimistic or even pessimistic. I'm more pragmatic. And I like to let people know that this is an opportunity to leverage your curiosity and also leverage the fact that everyone is learning AI together. It's not like insurance law or contract law where you can never know as much as a partner in your law firm. Now we're all back to square one. So that's an opportunity to zero in and to learn as much as you can. But it also emphasizes the value of critical thinking skills, emphasizes the value of what a law student needs to know outside the technology. The same way before you give a calculator to a kid, you want them to be able to do a multiplication so that when they use a calculator, they can tell, did I mistakenly click a number that I shouldn't? This number looks a bit odd. The same thing for using AI tools. You need to learn how to do legal research without technology at all. So when you get outputs from a generative AI system, how do you verify? You go back to the traditional modes of how that operates. So it has shifted the dynamics of legal education. 55% of law schools in the US now have AI courses. We're catching up in Canada, Osgood, U of T, of course, Lincoln Alexander. We have tech-related courses that students have to do. Some are quite challenging, but we're excited about where this is going and no one knows what the future would bring. For law practice, I think Andrew will tell us how that pans out in practice.
Well, I'm happy to try to take on that challenge, particularly since Keihgan gave us the liberty to be wrong, which is great because we don't usually get that opportunity. And I will probably be slightly less eloquent than Jake. One, because I'm coming down to something, and at some point my voice may give out, but also because I just don't think I would be as eloquent as Jake. Very well done. So it's interesting. So I've been doing technology transactions and technology work for almost 25 years here at the firm. From when I started as a student, it was the reason why I came here. And you would think that that would mean that I was, an evangelist for technology and that we're out there trying the latest and greatest all the time, particularly in terms of how it impacts our legal practice. That's not actually the way of it. Law firms are conservative. We also are, generally speaking, partnerships. And what that means is we pay out revenue to our partners. We keep some money back, but we don't keep it all there to adapt new technologies the same way that a corporation would. So that is a pressure against adopting new technology early. You're not going to see a lot of law firms that are early adopters in this. So from a perspective of AI, we started advising clients on AI, proselytizing the AI before the firm even allowed us to use models. Okay, and so it was always this, and I can say it now because it's a couple of years removed from that. But it was always this interesting dance. It's like, I can advise you on some of the concerns and risks from a data perspective, from a privacy perspective, et cetera, but I can't tell you what I've been doing. But now firms are fully in this. It's not that we didn't know that this was the way of the future. It was that we had to be conservative. We had to think about what are the risks of using this technology. What are we exposing in terms of solicitor client privilege? What are the risks associated with just the errors that Jake was talking about? You had to get your mind around that before you could actually start to use it aggressively. And so it's actually been like the floodgates have opened in the last year or so, I think. And I think this is probably the case for a lot of firms. And I can say this from the people I spoke to, and I'm just going to correct one for Keihgan. I'm now the past president of the Canadian Technology Law Association as of 2 weeks ago, and I'm very happy about that because I left them in a great shape, and also I have more time to myself now. So people we're starting to use this technology aggressively. And that we're now really getting the sense of what the use cases will be from a legal perspective. Now, it's similar to what Jake has said, and there's some other questions, we'll get back to this in more detail. It's like AI currently is an enabler. It facilitates your practice. It can make you faster at certain things, but it cannot replace your brain. Right? It cannot replace your instincts and your ability to evaluate what the right course of action is for your clients. All it can do is help you with that. Now, at some point, maybe when they have, and I don't think we're going to go into the kind of the definitions and artificial general intelligence or super intelligence and stuff like that, where this technology can actually think, maybe it might affect us in terms of replacing some elements of what we do, but that is not the case now. And I don't foresee that. What it can do, though, is it's a new skill that we all need to learn, and we all need to become proficient in it. And where this is an advantage for people entering the profession, particularly students, and I say particularly students because they may be AI native, where they started in with this technology a lot earlier than the rest of us, as opposed to people who are laterally into the profession and are already set in terms of the way that they learn. They'll be quicker to use this technology, quicker to adapt to it and to apply it. So what that will help them do is counteract the natural conservatism of law firms. So getting out there, establishing use cases, finding ways to make your practice more efficient. But in doing so, and this is one of the most important responsibilities for senior lawyers, we have to make sure that the juniors who are using this know the law, know their skill. You can use AI to help you craft a contract, to help you revise a contract, to help you in a negotiation. But if you don't know how to do those things on your own, you're doing your client a disservice. And if maybe one time there won't be a mistake, but at some point you're going to make a mistake. And that's when the law society is going to be coming after you. So the most important thing that we can do is make sure that people are working with this technology, learning how it can be efficient for them, but also making sure that they know their fundamentals. And that's the dynamic that we are thinking about from a practice perspective at all points now.
Thank you both. And I think that a lot of the important parts that you guys have raised about knowing your craft, knowing your baselines, your fundamentals, in order to be able to validate things that come out of AI tools is critical. And we will, of course, touch on some of these later. But one thing that I think flows really well into the following question is, marketability as a candidate, right? So, and I'll direct this one to Dolapo. What qualities or behaviors help candidates stand out as adaptable and well-positioned for long-term success?
Thanks so much for the question, Keihgan, and thank you also to Fasken for bringing together this very valuable conversation. Now, my world is a bit different in the sense that I work mostly with individuals or work directly in tech companies. But one of the things that I see across the board that founders and startups as well as hiring managers are looking for is someone who is proactive. and proactivity in the sense that before you get the role, how can you basically de-risk yourself as a hire? And the best way to de-risk yourself is because ultimately the hiring process is the team that is potentially hiring you is trying to see, okay, is this going to be a good fit? Is this a team member we can rely on for the next few years? Will we need to fire them and backfill them? And then how much is that going to cost us on an operational front? So the best way to de-risk this is to be proactive and to already start thinking that you are in the role. And I know that it almost sounds counterintuitive because you haven't gotten the role yet. But I find that what really works for candidates is how do you position yourself as though you have already gotten the role. Now, I would like to make this a little bit more specific because you could be like, huh, Dolapo, like, what are you talking about? The first way that I am seeing this in the industry is something called 90-day plans. Has everyone heard about a 90-day plan before? I'm seeing a few yes and a few no's at the same time. And so 90-day plans is basically providing a breakdown of how you are going to execute in your role to your hiring manager before you actually get the role. And so basically this could look as though you outline maybe the KPIs that you are looking to hit, some of the ways you are going to, let's say, onboard really quickly, the coffee chats you will be setting with the team internally to help you ramp really quickly. And I find that presenting the 90-day plan during your interview process will actually help you really stand out in the hiring process. And so proactivity is the biggest one. And I think in a little bit here, I'll also share how you can actually use AI tools to build this for you. And I think it still is super relevant to the law field here, because I'm sure there are repositories out there. Let me know if I'm saying this wrong. Repositories or like specific cases, and you can provide feedback to, let's say, a partner. You can message Andrew and say, hey, I noticed that you currently represented XYZ company. Notice that you did this. And here are a few considerations I thought about. I'd love to make a presentation to you to show how XYZ could be optimized. I mean, Andrew, if you got a message like that on LinkedIn, would you respond to the person?
If they're pointing out all the errors I made in advising my client, maybe a DM, yes, quickly. But...
Well, maybe not the errors. I'm just saying an optimized way to at least get a reaction versus, hey, are you open to a coffee chat? I think we've all progressed through the just like, I would like a mentor, I would like a coffee chat. So proactivity would be the biggest quality and behavior I'm seeing. The second aspect is also the concept of building a portfolio life. Has anyone heard about portfolio lives as like a way to think about our careers? The concept here is basically understanding that our careers are non-linear anymore, especially given the fact that technology is rapidly impacting every single field. But at the same time, there are actually overlaps between those industries. One of the greatest examples I heard of this from a Harvard Business School professor a few weeks ago was that there was a guy who was a physicist, but at the same time, he's been obsessed with origami since he was very young. And so he loved to like fold papers and create origami. And at first, he quit his job as a physicist to pursue, I know it sounds crazy, to become an origami artist. However, the thing that became really interesting is the fact that one day a company was looking for someone who could design and print 3D integrated designs, and he was the only one that had both the technical knowledge and the artistic knowledge to do that. And now he works on this same types of projects with like NASA for satellites, etc. And so all of that being said is that I think for everyone here, and it's something I always try to remind myself of, is that all the different experiences that you have had throughout your career, what are ways that you can use it as an overlap now to bring new insights to your law practice? Because oftentimes there are specific things that you've done in the past that you might have overlooked, right? I think I was having a conversation with someone earlier here, Celeste, in terms of, you know, in 2018, I had an internship with a VC company on how can we use AI to optimize productivity. Mind you, this was 2018. And now we all use AI every day for productivity. So I thought that was just like a bleep in my career, but it was not. So I want everyone to think about bleeps in your career and think about ways that actually overlaps with transferable skills that you could bring to the practice. I think that would be the second quality that I would mention.
Thank you so much. And I guess this means, Andrew, that I might just have to drop out and pursue my basketball career once again. Sorry, I'm joking. I know, exactly. All right, Jake, this one's for you. So, in your view, what areas of law are most likely to be transformed by AI, and what opportunities might that create for new lawyers?
You know, before we used to say it would be like tax law will go first, and you know, but I think once it's an aspect of law that is data driven and document intensive, AI has an impact in that field. Once there's an opportunity to deal with lots of data, and there's document, and which pretty much every aspect of law, we deal with precedent, we deal with law, we deal with documents. We find that AI does play a role. I can't mention one aspect of law that an AI tool can, well, maybe not very well, but from even things like from litigation, document review. I'll start with document review when it comes to contracts. There's tons of tools that can help advance your contract drafting, contract analysis. Most law students or even lawyers will tell you that if there's anything AI has done for them is the fact that it can take huge volumes of legal documents and help you tease out maybe key things you want to get out of it. The skill sets then relies on how are you asking it to do or make connections with data within the field. There are even people who say like things like predictive, their tools. I'm one of the people who's like, well, we need to like chill on that one because as a lot of Black people, if you're relying on history and all, it's anything predictive from policing or even predictive justice would be crazy. But like there are tools that would say, well, if we take all the judgment from this particular judge and we analyze it, here are their favorite words. This is the way they're leaning towards. In immigration, for example, there's actually tools that would do a ranking of who's more likely to grant a refugee application and who's more difficult in that, in that field. But there are tools. I would say every aspect of the law can be impacted by artificial intelligence. But like Andrew mentioned, law is not the space that would be worried about displacement by AI. It's not law. Definitely there's some fields I'll be like, well, you need to think twice if you really want to be valuable in this area. See how typists no longer are relevant in offices. There are certain fields. I'm also excited about the fact that people like barbers are not going to go like AI is not going to barb your hair. Like, people that lock.
Origami artists.
Right. But law just requires, I think because we regulate our profession, we say what is and who is a lawyer, no matter how great a robot is or a tool is. I hear this news, AI passed the bar in 5 minutes, but can he get the qualification? Can he get the degree? So, but more importantly, law also requires a lot of analysis. So yes, things like drafting emails, document review, we have tools that could do all that. But then it now elevates critical thinking, elevates creativity. I was saying this to my student earlier today, like, yes, you might be great at the drafting, but I want you to learn how to collaborate. I want you to learn how to work with a team because law also gives you the tools to manage lives. People are going to give you their property, their estate, their secrets. They're going to just entrust you with a lot. So an AI tool can't do that. An AI tool is not going to bother if your client is in jail or hasn't eaten, but you as a lawyer, it matters more. The last thing I would say is on the positive side, we've seen advancements in things like liability, IP, regulation. A lot of people need to know when AI is introduced in a field, like we need lawyers to help interpret the limits of what the law would do there. In fact, data is another big one. I think every organization now has someone doing some data related work, either looking at compliance of some sort. So every field of law is impacted by AI. Every field of law would be advanced by AI. Every field of law would push, tighten, and maybe threaten some aspects of the law. But welcome to the world we're in at the moment.
Can I chime in on that one? So I agree with you in terms of the lawyers are not going away. But the one thing that is of concern is who the lawyers are going to be, who are going to be the successful ones in the firms. So I've not seen this at our firm where we're retrenching, for example, and not hiring. I've seen anecdotal stories of that in the news of people who are like, well, okay, I can do this without X number of juniors, so no reason to hire anymore. That's obviously short-sighted. This firm is older than Canada. We'd like to continue to be around for far longer than the current partners are still here. And so given that, you have to keep renewing the firm. But there'll be other firms where they're going to be cutthroat about it. And so there'll be fewer jobs for some of us. And where the concern, I think, rests, and I've heard different stories on this, but or different impressions of this, is kind of in the middle. Not so much the newest lawyers coming right up, not so much the existing senior partners, et cetera, but kind of in the middle. Because what you're going to need to do is differentiate yourself, so that if there's a retrenchment and there are fewer positions available, yours is not the one that disappears. And how do you do that? You've got to be right up there on this technology. You have to demonstrate your value at all points in time, which is, not exactly unusual for lawyers. But it's going to be intensified, I think, over the next periods.
That actually really leads well into one of the questions, and I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. What strategies help lawyers maintain critical thinking and surpass the average outputs of AI tools? And I'll let this one be open to anyone who might want to respond. Professor?
I don't want to go all academic, but maybe we could. What strategies help lawyers maintain critical thinking? I think you would think that in an age of nanotechnology, quantum computing, Internet of Things, robotics, and all this, that you think like common sense would be like obvious, like we should all, but we're dealing with a time where anti-intellectualism seems to be the order of the day. Like people are arguing, is the earth flat? And you're like, what? It speaks to the era that we're in. Technology is not designed to elevate knowledge. It's designed to create demand for information. So people who develop most of these AI tools, if you look at their vision and mission, they're just like, we want to be the ones that would tell you what the truth is. We want to, so I say this because critical thinking becomes a very critical value to have. And so even though I teach data science law, I take students through the entire life cycle of an AI tool, but I use 10 critical approaches to interrogate that. And I can just pick one. Let's say if you look at disability justice and what disability teaches you about AI design and ideation. So when you want to develop a tool to solve a problem, there is a medical model of looking at disability, but there's also a social model. Disability is normal, should be embraced and celebrated. Disability should not be something that we should want to cure. So when AI developers think like, we'll have a tool that would help autistic people be non-neurodivergent, well, like that's not you're going to be a problem. If we take critical race theory, and if you look at the works of like Ruha Benjamin, Safiya Noble, Abeba Bihane, I could mention, Joy Budwamini, Black women who have theorized and analyzed how AI tools can help advance the law. Ruha Benjamin writes about the new Jim Code as to how AI tools in the US actually reverts Black populations back to the era of the new, of the Jim Crow era. And so critical thinking about what does technology do? Technology is not neutral. Technology is not objective. It carries with it the desires of the person who designed it, even though they don't know about it. It carries with it, AI systems rely and built on historical data. So anything, AI loves history, loves to go take us back. And so if Black populations, marginalized populations were treated a certain way under the law, the system has no option than to do exactly that. If you look at the case of Loomis versus Wisconsin, where the judges were like, we're going to use an AI tool to just tell us how many years we should be jailed for. It's never going to be progressive for a Black person. So we have to ask ourselves questions as to why is it that the average time a Black person spends in jail for sexual violence is about 2 years or so, but if it's a white person who's the victim, it's like almost 3 times that number. So critical thinking is very relevant. It's also relevant as to how you interrogate the use of the tools. There must be an alternative to verify if this information is correct. Mata versus Avianca, I could tell you more than 25 cases where brilliant lawyers have been caught in like, hey, this case doesn't exist. It just doesn't. I don't know where. And the thing about AI is it's so good. It looks like it exists. You could swear I've seen this before, but no. It does this thing called correlation. It would take similar names and just make it looks so good. The citation is like, there's no way this can't be true. So when you go on the internet and you type something on Google and Google gives you an AI answer versus giving you the option to pick where to pick from, this is what technology does. It drives you towards a particular end. We need people with critical thinking skills who can ask why not, what else? We need people who are able to say, nope, this is not accurate. I need to find more. And that's how you prompt engineer large language models. You have to be like, tell me, challenge me. You have to use the tool and not use it, but also have other ways to verify the information. So I think there should be critical thinking classes. I think that people should have conversations with individuals. I feel like technology does provide an avenue to advance mundane tasks, do the grunt work. And maybe that leaves us room to now have more critical conversations about what the law is and why it serves different populations in different ways.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Just to add on to what you mentioned on algorithm bias, I think it was 3 years ago while working at a tech startup with Karine. I know we did a session primarily on algorithm bias. And so for folks that are looking to maybe better understand how that shows up within a number of tech companies and AI tools, because when we look at the demographic of people that are building these tools, a lot of times they don't look like myself, like us in this room, number one. And number two, beyond that, when it comes to the way it's being trained on historical data, there are times where our communities are not even getting represented within that data set as well. And so I think her name is Dr. Joy. I can't remember the last name.
She's
Yes.
Ghanaian American.
Yes.
All the people who are advancing and solving the problem of algorithmic bias are mostly Black women, are solving the problem of the non-Black women.
Exactly, which then benefits everyone, right? Exactly. Black women solving the issues of the whole world. And so, yeah, I think Uncoded Bias, I think is called, on Netflix is a really, really good documentary to check out on that. The second thing I wanted to add in terms of critical thinking and, how to surpass the average outputs is also challenging AI when it comes to its responses. I think we've all seen that usually AI will agree with you. I think there was a story recently about a guy that went into psychosis or something like that from like AI just continuously agreeing with him. Anyway, all of that being said is that I think there's value in when you're also, prompting AI or using proper context in the conversations to play devil's advocate in those conversations so that you're getting a balanced output with whatever question you're getting out. So that is one thing that I do. The second thing I've heard from people, and it might be true, it might not be, is that the more mean you are to AI, apparently it actually provides better output. Because sometimes I would be like, oh, can you please do this? I don't know if I'm the only one who puts please when when I prompt. And so I have heard if you just be super direct and be very critical, it will actually give you better responses. I'm seeing a few nods. So that's another critical way to think about it, because otherwise you're just getting surface level data, because that's what AI is. It's just data rearranged, input and output. And it is dealing with such a large data set that, again, the more direct you are, but also more balanced in terms of the sides, the better output you would get.
I just want to add two things quickly. One, on the not being nice, please waste energy. Okay, so just don't do it, right? Except when you're speaking to people, of course. But the other thing is it's a slight tangent from there. It's not so much about the critical thinking skills I'm thinking about, but what is our value add as lawyers, right? So it's not just the critical thinking that, I mean, I think I had that from the time I was, I don't know, 5, if you ask my parents. It was always asking that question, like why, and trying to interrogate and get beneath it. But in the practice of law, AI is not going to go out there and develop clients, right? It's not bringing in work. So how can you differentiate and make yourself more valuable to a firm? Build relationships, do all the other soft skills that are part of law, which will not be supplanted you'll not be supplanted by AI in that. So, it's not about critical thinking is very important, but I think also focus on how you add value in other ways.
Absolutely. And I have a funny story about critical thinking from a young age. I was banned from doing what if questions in class in grade 4 because I too asked a lot of those. And I think that, discussing how do you differentiate yourself and what additional values do you add to the legal profession actually flows really well into this question for you, Dolapo. What role does personal branding play in differentiating yourself, and how can students and young lawyers start building that authentically?
Great question. I'm going to turn a question to the public, and feel free to just raise or not raise your hand. How many of us have LinkedIn on here? Keep your hand up if you post on LinkedIn. Okay, and keep your hand up if you post more than 2 times a week on LinkedIn. Oh, oh, Letecia. Oh, okay.
I know.
Okay, I see. Letecia was the main person that kept her hand up, but I know the time period also really matters. So one of the things that is becoming really critical that I'm seeing, both from the lens of a hiring standpoint, as well as just like positioning yourself as a brand, is that number one, posting more actually attracts more opportunities for you. And I'm going to kind of break this down in a few things to consider here. So oftentimes the way we engage with content online as individuals is either we're learning, we're being entertained, or we're following someone's journey as a curator. And so I want everyone here to think about that, right? In the sense that sometimes people find, posting on LinkedIn cringy, right? It's like, how many I'm so humbled to announce, or I'm excited to share that, right? I think everyone is kind of tired of those posts, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't celebrate or hype ourselves up online. Please do not be overly humble, please. That's critical, but I think there's an opportunity where if you are someone who is, let's say, even just like considering AI ethics, AI and law, or any other parts of your professional journey, there is an opportunity for you to share your learning experience and journey and career journey on LinkedIn, because it's going to attract opportunities, whether that is from a hiring standpoint, but other opportunities for your career. And so that's why I mentioned earlier that you could either be an expert, entertainer, or curator. And so it's up to you what buckets you would like to fall under. People also really like following personal brands more than actually like company brands. And so one person that I think does a really good job of this online in terms of teaching you how to do this, and he works with a lot of businesses actually on this, is someone called Matt Gray, Mattgray. He's Canadian, lots of YouTube content on how to do so. And I would like to challenge everyone to try and post like 3 times a week. So that's one way. And 3 times a week, I saw your face. You're like, oh my God, that's so much work. I have things to do. But here is a super quick workflow, right? For example, we all have voice memos on our phone, right? Use your voice memo to, on what's today? On Wednesday, I went to the Cable event with Fasken, and here are some questions that were asked that was really interesting. These are my thoughts on it. What do you guys think? Take the transcript on that, put it in ChatGPT, and let it edit it for grammar and flow. Tell it to keep the tone because you still want it to sound human. And then schedule the post. If you do 3 voice memos, do that workflow. It's going to take you maximum 1 hour to do that on a Saturday or a Sunday, right? And so that's a super easy workflow on building your personal brand. Or if you're someone who is not LinkedIn type and you like more long form content, Substack. Does anybody familiar with Substack? Right, perfect. So you can choose to write longer form content where you don't have to be an expert if you are exploring and curating your own learning journey, right? It could be making something about, I don't know, here are 5 podcasts that I've listened to that and all of the things I've learned from there. So that's where those are some actionable points. And this is the other part of why this is really important, is that oftentimes when candidates have interviews or make an application, what do you think is the first thing the recruiter is doing? They're stalking them professionally, right? And if there is no content, especially in this era that we're in, because the competition is so high, they just check your profile and they move on to the next candidate, right? And so that is why personal branding plays a huge role in the hiring front. It allows you to stand out as a thought leader, right? And again, it doesn't mean you have to be an expert. A thought leader could also be someone who is curating their learning experience and sharing that with others. And so in terms of how students can start that authentically, Substack, like I mentioned, or you create your own newsletter. Substack is like a newsletter. You can also use Medium. You can use Beehive. You can use MailChimp. There are so many tools out there that you can use today to create a newsletter. And then, like I mentioned, do 3 posts on LinkedIn, tag me in them, and I will comment as a response.
Thank you so much. So we'd like to take an opportunity now to open up the floor to questions. If anybody has any, feel free to raise your hand in the room. And I assume someone's monitoring the chat, so we've got someone here as well for that, if you're online.
Can we get him a microphone for the online? Thanks, Letecia.
Thanks for everyone's insights. I think they're really interesting. Maybe just for context, the reason I'm here is I'm a financial planner and I recently joined a team that focuses on lawyers. And so I'm trying to make sure that the practice that I'm a part of, and hopefully my own practice in the near future, is informed subjectively when it comes to lawyers, but lawyers of color specifically, not just Black, but just color in general. And so my question is maybe more to Dolapo, but how do you suggest maybe somebody implement things like when you think of like universal design principles, when you think about, I guess, equitable content, like what does that mean when you're doing things like, okay, what hashtags do I put on a post? How do I curate the things I post? Like, do I post this event? Do I post this other particular event? Like, how does that shape what people are looking at me like, but also, I guess, from the, I guess, outside perspective, like almost like for me specifically, like pre-qualifying a client, both in terms of what I do, like objectively, but just, I don't know, vibe, like you kind of have to like the person you're working with, right? Yeah.
Yeah, to clarify, there are two pillars I'm seeing in your question. The first is like a content strategy, and then the second is a sales strategy in terms of pre-qualifying. Do you mind clarifying which pillar you want me to focus on, or would you like me to do both?
But
Okay, I can do both.
I guess what I'm feeling, I guess, is more subjective. The insight is just like, putting myself out there, I want to do that, but I also don't want to like self-segregate and maybe miss opportunities. So I don't know, whatever I feel like answers that question.
Okay, so putting out content that doesn't niche you only to one community.
I guess.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the first pillar here to think about is number one, take a step back and think about what you want to be known for. I think that's the first step before posting anything. So number one is, okay, pick that. And it doesn't need to be one thing. It could be three things, right? So for me, it's sales, it's hiring, and relatable, right? That's why I'm sneaking in some jokes. Hopefully you guys think I could be a part-time comedian. So once you have those three pillars, the next thing you can do is then think about how your content will funnel into that. So what I mean by that is, if you've, let's say, chosen wealth management, you said financial planning, right? So one part of financial planning could be on the education side, right? Providing valuable tips for not just the audience that you serve, right? But that anyone can find helpful in general. So that's one. That could be one pillar. The second could be then looking at the more relatable part. And this is where sometimes people feel a little bit, again, cringy because it requires some level of vulnerability, right? People want to hear about the times you've failed or times that you have faced certain challenges and how you were able to navigate that, or the times that maybe something didn't turn out as you expected, right? So that's on the relatability piece. And so maybe what's 5 things I wish I knew before I became a financial planner that I now know, right? That now becomes a relatable post to some extent, right? That others can learn from, while at the same time, they're getting a little bit understanding on who you are. And then the last piece is, like I mentioned, curator, expert, or entertainment. I think it's okay to show our personalities as individuals also on LinkedIn. Everyone has like a different view on this, but for example, I like hiking or running or just like, of course, within balance, right? I think there's some posts too that like people will overshare on LinkedIn and it's like, ooh, that was meant for a group chat with your friends, you know? So, that's not what I mean. What I mean by that is, you know, as human beings, relationships matter to us. And what really builds trust is when we're like, oh, cool, that person also likes biking. Oh, cool, that person also likes cooking. So whatever it is that you enjoy doing outside of your work that you're comfortable with sharing and doesn't blur the lines, right? I think that is where it allows you to not niche too down within one community, because there's some things that are just universal, whether you're a woman, man, anything in between when it comes to like the spectrum of that, but also race, etc. If you like to run, you like to run, right? Like same thing with cooking, same thing with any other hobbies that you might have. So I hope that helps provide that.
Can I just add to that a little bit? And I'm going to take a slightly different tactic than Dolapo. There are different social media channels out there. You can pick and choose, right? So from my perspective, and I don't necessarily surf LinkedIn a lot, but like I want to see things that are about the profession that you're in, that are professional. The more personal, that doesn't have an element of it. Like for example, if you went on a bike ride for cancer or something and you went with some of your clients, that's professional. If you just went with your boys, not, right? So you have to curate from that perspective and pick and choose, because you also have to bear in mind that one is, you may be doing sales to try and drum up clients and business, which is how, what we do here at Fasken. But if you're looking for a job, they're also looking at everything, right? And always just bear in mind that whatever you post, you want it to be something that if it's in front of your next potential boss, that you're not going to be embarrassed by it, right? And I would also I really would hope that more people on LinkedIn would go back to what it was originally intended to be as a professional system. You've got, now it's Instagram, it used to be Facebook, which I haven't posted on. I literally have not posted on Facebook since I got married. All right. But that would have been where I would have posted if I was doing something personal.
Can I add something really tiny? It might be a bit academic, but there's something called data bodies. I don't know if you know what that is. Data body, like a body, data body. So right now, with the capacity of AI tools, whether or not you post online, we can create a personality based on all the things that about you online. And so there are people who are like, oh, you're a farmer, you're like farming, but maybe you just have Monstera plants and you're liking all of these and you've posted a few. I'm just saying, in the next few years, it's scary, but like in the next few years, it's what you put out there that would determine that data body. And it's interesting because we all don't pay for the same price for flights. His flight would be more expensive than mine, just based on the algorithm would calculate like, oh, professor, pay, small pay, partner, But I'm serious. We do an experiment in my class where I ask everyone, let's book a flight to Cairo. And then we say, okay, who got the lowest price? Who got the highest price? Toronto to Cairo. And then we look at, oh, wow, you've been checking out Swarovski rings. You just love proposals. You're never going to get, you don't have a boyfriend, but you're fine. Like, that's why your flight is high, because you've informed the system that I pay a lot. The same thing applies to a data body. So I would just say, like, when you're posting online, think about it like you're throwing something into that profile, because in the next 4 or 5 years, people would not have to ask you, what do you like? They would just pull out your data body and they would say, this person is this. They love to hike. They're a very critical lawyer. They do this, but they also do that. And it would take out all of that based on, I'm not proud to say this, but even for we as professors, we sometimes have to throw out our research out there, because we want, when people go on ChatGPT and be like, I want to research on Blackfeet, my name should pop out. If your name doesn't pop out, then your work is lost somewhere in there. So think about it like you're investing into your data body, so to speak.
And I'll just add, as the person doing too many LinkedIn posts, like your own posts. Like, love, insight. It boosts the amount of people who sees it. So just a little.
And comment on your own posts. Like the first 2 comments, it shows that the post is engaging, and then the algorithm will push it out.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank every one of you for your very beautiful and warm and cozy friendly panel atmosphere that you created, insightful advices that you added. First, I want to start with adding a comment to what's just brought up in the panel and then ask my question. So it was brought up that AI is very sensitive to more rude language and more direct language, or maybe something that is that is known as weird language. It was there was actually I'm an AI researcher, a generative AI researcher. I'm a PhD student, and there was a study by Harvard University that apparently large language models have some form of cultural brain, and you can show that, for example, ChatGPT, with respect to different cultures, different human cultures around the globe, how is it positioned? How distant it is from, for example, Chinese, African, American, or German culture. And it seems like that it's most close to German, some cultures like German cultures. And but they say, actually, AI or large language models such as ChatGPT are actually have the culture of weird, or that is Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic people. So maybe that's could, to some extent, explain why it is more responsive toward more direct prompts or something like that. But adding to that, I had a question about what Jake was talking about forgot my question. I forgot my question.
Yeah, absolutely. Online. Thank you for the comment, though. Yes, thank you. That's very helpful.
Avoiding that oversharing that you were speaking about. Oh. I'll say it once more. Sorry about that. The question was from a law student online saying, how do you strike the right balance on LinkedIn between sharing useful, substantive content and avoiding the kind of overposting that we were discussing earlier?
So somebody can shut me down over this, but as a law student who hasn't yet entered your professional life, why do you need to be posting anything on LinkedIn? Not saying you can't, but what's the purpose of it, right? When we are reviewing applications, we will certainly check social media for things, but not at the first stage, because there's you get thousands of applications. So when you get a little closer, you'll check, right? But it's not relevant to me in terms of reviewing a student as a potential hire at a firm. So what's the advantage of doing it at all? If you're concerned that you don't know how to strike the balance, don't bother.
I could just say, I teach data science law, I teach big tech, I'm the tech prof at my school. So before my first class, I've done a background check on every student. I know what they like, I know where they're from, I know what they did as undergrad, I know who I'm dealing with. I know I even have, it helps me connect. Of course, there's sometimes I just one or two students, I just can't find anything about them. And I'm just like, what's going on? I'm switching their surname, first name, looking at, What I would say is, as a law student, you don't lose anything by not posting, but sometimes you can be strategic. You want to posture. Let's say I have an interest in working in a law firm. I want to be following the law firm. I want to see events that they're doing. I want to know who's leading what practice, where have they spoken to, what's going on. You want to position yourself in a way that gives you advantage to learn more. Maybe you've written an op-ed about something, a case that relates, you want to use social media strategically, not a platform to share what you like and everything. It's not to be opinionated and you see what's going on. You want to use it to your advantage, because to be honest with you, for some law students, the only space where you can just see all the partners and it's on LinkedIn. So you want to follow what they're following. And sometimes LinkedIn does help you out, where it says you might want to look at all these people as well. So as a law student, I'll just say three things. One is, let your profile show where you want to be. The lawyer you want to be you should look like your profile. Secondly, you want to be strategic as to who you follow. Then thirdly, maybe you have an op-ed you've written. Maybe you've won a moot. Maybe you won a negotiation competition. So that when the law firm has shortlisted you and they check oh, look at her record. That's the only thing I would tell a law student to do. And of course, there are a lot of tools for that. You want to keep your private and keep your professional.
Yeah, and not posting does not mean don't be active either, right? You can be passively active, and you can also have a well fleshed out profile that includes your resume, includes things that you've mentioned, such as your participation in a moot, and you can treat it as an online resume that you update as time goes on. But to Andrew's point, if you aren't able to or haven't yet been able to decipher the difference between professional and personal for your own personal brand, it could be wise to take a pause on the really direct, opinionated sort of posts. Well said.
Yeah, adding to this discussion, what you asked, how should we learn critical thinking? Because it's somehow important that we know how should we think when we want to post something, we're presenting something, and we should definitely have some kind of critical standpoint toward what we are sharing with the whole world, how other people are seeing this. For me, as an engineering student, we used to learn it from cognitive dissonances, from seeing adverse things that were somehow painful for us and somehow affected maybe experience difficult emotions to learn that critical thinking. But how do you think it's possible to develop critical thinking or maybe migrate someone's critical thinking from a particular perspective to a different perspective without harming their internal emotions or maybe elevating those emotions or making them more beautiful or more,
What's here? I'm very I'm I'm a radical Black scholar. I'm just gonna put that out there. I still feel like things like storytelling, allowing kids play with sand, and it helps because we're in a technological era. We're in an era where people believe that because I got 4 people forwarded it to me on WhatsApp, then it must be true. Well, WhatsApp is not. You'll be amazed. People are citing social media. Like WhatsApp is just a sharing platform. It doesn't generate news. But with misinformation and disinformation and deep fakes, it's going to be very hard to actually substantiate what is factual and what is not. And so I think we need to go back to the traditional ways of how do we develop critical thinking. People need to make their hair in silence and spend hours there talking about what's going on in your life. Like people need to connect on a physical level. That way they do have examples of real connection. A lot of young people just like, it's technology they've known. So what do you mean it's not true? Like that's all they've referenced. And so we also need to think about apprenticeship in law, meeting with people, just understanding like going through the process of how you solve a case with people and the twists and turns is sometimes more valuable than submitting papers here and there. So critical thinking has become a critical aspect of engagement, not just for law, but even for like navigating the world, so to speak. There are people who are getting threatened by bots. People who haven't slept last night because of non-human objects. People in Japan are getting married to, and it's becoming, right now we're talking about this notion of cognitive integrity. We're talking about problems of brain rot. Some people are like, chat, what can I eat today? That's where we are. I think for us, maybe for my age, we do have examples of when these things were not there. So we can be like, we can fall back. You know what I mean? But for some younger folks, they don't have that capacity. And that's what we need to really build. And that's what I think is lacking in this technological era.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. Thank you to all attendees online and in person. For those in person, we'll have some refreshments and a little bit of food. And thank you, Fasken, for hosting us in such a lovely space. Have a great night.